Bismillāh, ir-Raḥmān, ir-Raḥīm. Welcome back. I'm your host, Rebecca Ann, the Neurospicy Revert. If you've been following my journey, you know where I am now. A Muslim revert, a mother of three, a wife, and a woman piecing together the puzzle of faith and healing. But before I could ever talk about Islam, I have to talk about the life that came before it. Because to understand where I am, you have to understand what I survived to get here. This episode is about the man who made me feel safe and the lifetime of trauma that followed when I lost him. This is not an easy story to tell. It's a story about childhood fear, abuse, survival, and the one person who taught me what love was supposed to feel like. So if you need to pause, breathe, or step away for a moment, that's okay. Healing isn't linear, and stories like this aren't meant to be easy. Everyone saw a strict Christian family, a mother who served at church, a little girl with bows in her hair, and a household that looked picture perfect from the outside. What they didn't see was the child hiding from a 400-pound man, praying someone would finally protect her. You see, my mother was my world once, up until she met my brother's dad in the early 90s. She didn't marry him for love, not truly. She married him for survival. He came from money, and she came from struggle. And she brought me along, a child who didn't fit his clean, quiet, childless picture. At first it seemed fine. Rules, structure, discipline. But soon, structure turned into control, and control turned into fear. I learned early that I was to be seen and not heard, and eventually not seen at all. When my brother was born in 1997, everything changed. The man my mother married, all 400 pounds of rage and resentment, became a walking storm. His anger lived in the walls, in the way doors slammed, in the way silence meant danger. I remember one night like it's carved into my bones. He told my mother, "Going to jail is worth hitting you." I was 6, maybe 7, lying in bed, listening until instinct took over. I ran into the living room screaming, "Don't you touch my mama!" And he turned on me immediately. He backed me down the hallway, his large stomach slamming into my small body over and over until I hit the door, my back literally against my only exit. And I remember the terror of realizing I couldn't fight him, not with my fists, not with my voice. And then my mother finally hit him, not out of anger, but out of desperation, and I ran. That night changed me, but what came after broke me. When we finally left him, I thought the nightmare was over, but that's when I truly disappeared. My mother's attention shifted completely to my brother, his therapy, his trauma, his needs, while mine went unnoticed. I wasn't the child to comfort anymore. I was the reminder of everything she wanted to forget. I became the problem, the bipolar child. Not because a doctor said so, but because my mother did. She literally typed child anger mood swings into Ask Jeeves and decided I was bipolar. Within weeks, I was sitting in the pediatrician's office being prescribed lithium. No tests, no second opinion, no compassion, just a label. And from that moment, I was broken in everyone's eyes, even though I was just hurting. We moved constantly. New towns, new schools, new rules. Never long enough to heal, just long enough to pretend. By the time we finally stayed put in 2000, my outbursts were worse. But they weren't rebellion. They were screams for help no one could hear. between the trauma, undiagnosed autism, and ADHD, and the side effects of medication I should have never been on, I was suffocating in plain sight. The lithium made me foggy. The Klonopin made me nauseous. I was a child learning to survive chemical silence, living underwater while everyone else breathed air. And the only person who saw me was my grandfather. He was my lifeline, my rescuer, the man who'd drop everything and drive to come get me, no questions asked. He was safety. He was peace. He was love without conditions. He was the closest thing I ever had to a father, a steady man who called me Sissy like it was a sacred name. He'd pick me up in his old Ford pickup truck that smelled like pipe tobacco, pine, and fishing gear. And then we'd drive the winding lake roads in silence, windows down, listening to Tradio on the radio. He didn't feel the quiet. He made it safe. Sometimes we'd stop for ice cream. Other times we'd fish until the sky turned pink. He didn't need to fix me. He just needed me to be. And for a girl who grew up walking on eggshells, that kind of love was revolutionary. When his kidneys began to fail, I refused to leave his side. 3 times a week, I sat through dialysis, watching the man who once worked sunup to sundown fade before my eyes. His body weakened, but his faith never did. He told me not to be afraid. He said, "Sissy, don't you worry. I'll always be with you." I prayed harder than I ever had before. I begged God not to take him. I promised I'd be better, holier, quieter, anything. But he died anyway. And when my mother called me from the school payphone, her voice shaking, "He's gone." I remember the sound that came out of me wasn't even human. It wasn't a scream or a sob, but it was something in between. I fell to my knees in the hallway. Teachers ran toward me, and for the first time in my life, I felt what it meant to be truly alone. That day, my faith cracked like glass. After that, I stopped praying. I still went to church, still sang hymns, still bowed my head, but God felt like a stranger. Every sermon about mercy felt like mockery. Every verse about love felt like a lie. At home, we were living on food stamps, HUD housing, Medicaid, and TANF. My mom said she couldn't work, but the truth was she didn't want to. After years of being taken care of by her parents and her husband, she didn't know how to survive on her own. And when depression crept in, the kind that wraps itself around your bones and makes getting out of bed feel impossible, doing what you're supposed to gets hard. And I see that now. But back then, all I saw was a woman who'd stopped fighting. Our fridge was always half empty, the lights always one notice away from shut off, and the air thick with resentment. She'd take her anger out on me, the scapegoat, the problem child. And I learned to take the hit, not just physically, but emotionally, because that's what daughters of broken women do. We absorb the pain that was never ours to carry. When my grandfather died, I didn't just lose him. I lost my anchor, the only adult who ever made me feel safe. After that, it felt like I was fighting the world with a plastic knife and a cardboard shield. Every time I tried to stand, life just hit harder. I didn't know it then, but that loss would become the thread running through everything that followed. The trauma, the rebellion, the witchcraft, the reversion. Because once you've known safety and lost it, you spend years trying to find it again in people, in religion, in rituals, in yourself. People often ask why I talk about my grandfather so much. And it's because before I ever knew Allah, he was the only reflection I had of what divine love felt like. Steady, patient, kind. And when he died, I stopped believing that anyone, even God, would ever love me that way again. But here's what I've learned. Allah never replaces the people we lose. He uses them to teach us what His mercy feels like. And when the time is right, He calls us back to it. My grandfather's love was the first language of faith I ever spoke. It's the reason I recognized Allah's gentleness when I finally met Him years later. If you've ever lost the one person who made you feel safe, know that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry their love forward, even as you find your way back to your Creator. With endless dua and gratitude, I'm Rebecca Ann, the Neurospicy Revert. Until next time, stay soft where the world tried to make you hard.